Yeah.
County closed yesterday, all the.
I was shocked about
I
that.
know.
Well, they were open the day before.
Yeah, the worst day. I don't know what happened.
I was like, I know it was cold, but the roads were fine.
I don't know what that was about.
But just think of all the real estate transactions that couldn't get recorded. I mean, all the documents that need to be put on file.
Yep, sure.
And then it randomly gets shut down.
Yeah.
So I had some sorority sisters that work for Kanawha County Schools that still had to report Tuesday, and they showed up to completely unplowed parking lots.
And I
No
heard
food, no
if they
food,
didn't, they were
classrooms.
required to take a personal
They
day.
did. They did have
There's
to
a lot of
take
grumbling about that.
Yeah, they've got
All right.
interesting detail policy.
Yeah.
State.
45.
Travis, are we on the record? Good thing. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the attendance on the very cold, although the warmest day of the week. Appreciate you being here, fighting through the snow and cold. How are we on a quorum?
Yep,
I see a lot of
we-
empty seats.
Yes, we do have a quorum. We have, I'll just run through the roll call real quick for you. Representing Kanawha County, we have President Todd Goldman, Vice President Valerie Gaynor, Jay Snodgrass. Representing the City of Charleston, we have Mr. Thomas Tolliver, we have Heidi Bonnet-Adams here. And electronically representing Dunbar, we have Larry Bailey. And in person, we have Gene Arthur representing South Charleston and Bob Sutphin representing St. Albans. So we have 5 of the 8 partners necessary to have a quorum.
So Larry Bailey's the only one online. Are there some other folks online?
I believe Jake Smith is here from Rick.
Okay.
Thank you, Jake, for joining us. And Mayor Summers is also in attendance. Clinton.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Well, thanks for doing that. It's been a while since we've been together, so we're going to look at the November 16th board meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Are there any questions, comments? Motion for approval?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Motion by Snodgrass, second by Gaynor. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, Jessica. On the fifth, yeah. We're right there.
All right.
Are you gonna do both months, or are you gonna?
I'm just gonna give you an overall summary of both months.
Okay.
I'm not gonna detail line by line and bore everybody to death.
Okay.
Alrighty. So your packets do include schedules 1 through 3, which detail our financials for this fiscal year so far. My main focus is gonna be on schedule 2, which is revenue and expenses. In November and December, our operating expenses did exceed our operating revenues by 1.2 million and 1 million respectively. This is in line with our range of expenses this year, year to date so far. When we last met, we were exceeding budget on revenues by 63,000 and above last year by 188,000. As of December, we're continuing that trend, and we are 371,000 above budget and more than a 450,000 above last year at this time. This is largely due to increasing our sole reimbursement rate, so we're closer to breaking even, and having our reserve funds in the higher yield investment accounts. We are still under budget on our operating expenses through December, but the cushion has shrunk to 155,000. Some notable expenses in November and December included hiring 7 new drivers, paying out the annual tool and uniform allowance, and $200,000 on our contract with Equans. Through December, we have received almost 5.4 million in levy receipts. We continue to exceed last year's total, which today is 330,000 more, and it's also 1.2 million more than we had budgeted for. So we're doing well in that respect.
The 1.2 that's for after your documented December.
Yes, correct.
It looks like these just go through November, is that right? What we have?
There's 2 sets there.
There's another one on the next one.
If you push it through, it should have.
That's why I was asking if she was gonna do them individually or collectively.
Did I put in the wrong one?
No, you're good.
They're there. They're there.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're there.
Any other questions?
And have we received any payments for January, even though they're not on here, from the county?
They are pending, I believe, this week.
Okay. I mean, is that trend gonna continue, or do we know?
That I don't.
Don't know.
It
Okay.
feels kind of like a crap sheet.
Yeah, I mean, well, whenever you see these numbers that far out of alignment, it makes me concerned that there's a mistake along the way. Not necessarily on our end, but just the way the county has submitted them to us.
If you tell me, I'm not sure of that.
Okay.
How's our investments going? Have any updates on those since we started?
Yeah, and
We
the
were-
process that, like when you transferred over, did that go well?
Yeah, in the first month or so, the market was down, and we were down about 30,000, but we have rebounded, and I think we're up 30,000
Okay.
on that one.
Yeah, but you probably don't have a January,
No, not yet.
yeah, because it's back down.
We can start including that, I mean, if you guys want that as a report too.
Well, I didn't hear.
If you want that as a part of a report for the board, how
I think we agreed to do that at the beginning, to keep a close eye on that.
Yeah.
And
Definitely at 6 months that we were gonna
Yeah,
look at it
yeah, revisit
to
it.
decide.
Take a peek at it.
Because on the line item on Schedule 2 for investments, that's the only revenue that goes into that line item. Am I right about that?
Yes, correct.
Well, that's 11 million, the 60,000, 11 million.
Well, I was looking at revenue. You're talking about the balance sheet probably?
Yeah, short-term investment. Yep.
Which one are we looking at? Sorry.
I think that,
Schedule 2 on December.
Was it scheduled to on 23, short-term investment?
Yep,
Yes,
Yes,
that's all that
yes,
goes
that
in
was
there.
it. That's
Yes.
one of
yep, so the line, yeah.
Have
Fourth
there been
row.
any strategy meetings? I think there was a discussion about strategy meetings with the investment team.
I believe we will have strategy meetings every 6 months or so. As of right now, they're doing conservative, moderate investments on that.
So we've not had an initial meeting?
Not yet, no, no, just, it is a conversation.
well, but if, we gave them pretty clear instruction about what the board approved. And so I think, or at least my recollection, the thought was proper was at 6 months that we would evaluate whether we needed to modify that or not. And that would probably be coming up March, is that about the time frame?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so probably by middle of next month, you ought to be thinking about getting together the group that worked on that to begin with and doing some kind of update. And make sure somebody from, I can't remember, who's doing, is it BB&T that's doing it?
Truist, yes.
Truist, yes, make sure somebody from Truist is available.
Absolutely.
Okay, a couple of different items we cover on the financial statements, but does anybody have any question for Jessica? And just so it's clear, since we didn't have a board meeting in December, we have November and December financial statements as part of what was sent out to us. If not, that'll all be attached to the meeting minutes for future reference. And we'll move along to number 5.
We do not have any invoices in excess of $5,000.
Okay.
Was there an accident in Dunbar with the bus yesterday?
Yes, and I think, Kurt, you wanna go over that next in the insurance report, or, well,
Next on the agenda.
You're up, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Good segue.
I just saw
yeah,
that.
thank you, Dean, yes.
in your packet, you're gonna see that we had, 4 different incidents from November and December. A lot of things dealing with, hard braking and things that occurred on the bus. It wasn't necessarily collisions. We did have one accident on the 35th Street Bridge that folks may have saw on the news. So that's the insurance report in terms of November and December. January, just to touch on it, we did have an accident in Dunbar. A person pulled out in front of our bus and our driver couldn't really do anything. And I think Brett can attest to this, it's hard to stop a 35-foot bus when someone pulls in front of you. We see a lot of insurance claims dealing with those types of incidents, where we don't actually get in a collision, but our driver has to make some type of evasive action to avoid a head-on collision, or someone pulling in front of them, or someone just stopping right in the middle of the road. And those are the ones that we deal with a lot.
Now, did they actually hit the car, or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
they did.
yeah, I mean, he
I
could,
couldn't tell.
he couldn't stop.
Yeah.
It was just, he tried everything he could, and just, unfortunately,
Well, yeah,
didn't
that-
able. No injuries,
Yeah.
there was no injuries, so that was good.
Because it was right there where you're going into Kroger's, there on Dunbar
Correct.
Avenue. And I guess they pulled back from there.
Correct, and, so we've had a few incidents in January, so we'll update the board in February, we'll go through this as
Honestly,
well.
I just-
It's
I
all
just
right.
saw it. And
Well, folks see it, and then the news, especially if it's a slow news day, they like to come out and investigate the accident. That was the one on the 35th Street Bridge. It made the news. So those things, especially when they occur in Charleston, Dunbar, South Charleston, where the news can get there really quickly, it will. So that's the insurance report.
There's a couple people pro se on here. Is that common? And what's that process like?
Are you talking about, well.
There's no legal counsel listed for several of these.
Yeah, that's what, they're getting legal counsel, they just haven't sent me a letter yet.
So they've come and said, I'm injured and I plan to make a claim, and I haven't selected legal counsel, but you know that that's coming.
Yes, so I would say though, back to your question about pro se, there's about half do not get attorneys. They just work through the insurance process, and then we have half that get attorneys. It just varies on what the incident was.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times what will happen is I'll hear from the attorney before I hear from the claimant. And then we'll have to go through there and then file the claim, and then our insurance company will start working with them.
I mean, I don't know what those payments look like, but it just seems like some of these incidents don't rise to the level that an attorney is going to spend a lot of time on it.
Correct, and then we only, we don't have generally massive amounts coming out of these claims. Our buses are really big. When a car hits a bus or we hit a car, in general, the action inside that bus is not that great, meaning people are not moving around. Brett could probably tell you more on this, but there are some instances, especially when we do a hard brake, once that bus stops suddenly, everyone is pushed forward. And those are the ones, the slips and falls and the hard brakes are the ones that we have the biggest claims for generally. It's not accidents, it's not getting hit, it's those types of situations where we have to do some type of evasive action in order to avoid something even more serious.
Is there a reason, I mean, I understand it probably takes a long time, but some of these are pretty old. I mean, you're approaching 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so what I did with this spreadsheet, and thank you for mentioning this, I did take all the old claims out and close them out. There are some, a couple of these are in pretty substantial litigation right now. Our drivers had to go through a deposition. Our attorneys, because we have a separate group of attorneys that work on this in Jackson Kelly. The insurance company hires them, as you would know. So they're working through those lawsuits. Some of them do last several years. We just haven't closed them up yet. I get status updates every month on those. One, I know the one on 7/21/21. We are still working through that.
Is that the only one that's filed right now? 'Cause that's the only one that says yes in that lawsuit filed.
Correct, and the next one, they don't have an attorney yet, but we haven't closed it yet. I can check with AIG on that. That's our previous insurance company, so they were the ones that had that. But those are like I said, these are just the open ones right now. I don't know when the 21 will be finished. It could be another year or two.
How much time do you spend on this particular topic?
Well, it depends. So there were a couple of months, and then all of a sudden we have all these incidences, and you gotta imagine if we have 15 people on the bus, I'm hearing from 5 or 6 of them and dealing with different attorneys. It's just like the recent ones in December, before this plan was, and before this spreadsheet was updated, another law firm reached out on another incident, the same incident that occurred. So it varies. Right now it's quite a bit of time. I'm talking to insurance companies, I'm talking to attorneys, I'm talking to the claimants. So it varies depending on what's going on.
Okay. Well, thanks for further explanation on that.
Who is our insurance company now?
West Virginia Corp. Remember we changed from AIG to West Virginia. And they've been working well. The first couple of claims we had to they have a way of doing it, I had a way of doing it with AIG, so we've kind of gotten that down. So they've been working really well with us.
Thank you.
Okay, good discussion, Jacob, on operations.
So the last page in your packet there is a new operations report. So we combined the CAT report that we've gone over for years and the Schedule 4C, the GFI Farebox report. So So in this report, you'll see the ridership numbers. It's broken out a little differently. So in the far left column, you have the ridership for fixed route, then ADA passengers, door passengers, and then total. So last 2 months, there's a slight decrease in ridership, but in December, that 4,800 decrease in passengers. It should actually be a little higher, but the last day of the month, we had an issue with the fare boxes, probing them, so we weren't able to probe but 2 buses that day. So those ridership numbers will be included in January's information. So we should see an increase in January. Keep going to the right there, and there's some new metrics that we feel are better to inform you all of that we keep track of on a weekly and monthly basis. On-time performance for fixed route service and demand service, and then passengers revenue hour. So in the fixed route, we're this year averaging 230 passengers an hour, and then on the demand side, 2.2 an hour. You see the biggest increase on demand from last year, where we carried 1.8 an hour to 2.2. That has a lot to do with the new software, the VIA scheduling software that we acquired this past year. Better to better optimize the trips and get more passengers onto, or group the passengers onto one vehicle rather than sending multiple drivers out to pick them up. And then down the very bottom, you'll see the receipts for SOAR and Motive Care. Motive Care is the Medicare receipts. We just changed the title for that column. And then one last report, Schedule 4D, that's the passive usage report. We need to work on this report too. The new validators, the new mobile ticketing technology we put in place last month. We'll need to update this report to display that information, how many passengers are using mobile ticketing.
So what does this report look like? I can't, mine not numbered or labeled or whatever. Is it this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's titled Ridership Monitoring Data, Pass Use versus Cash Use.
So some of this we've always looked at, but
Right. Yeah, some of this information we don't think needs to be on here. It's, we kind of condense some of the operation reports so we're not duplicating the data, the information.
okay.
But we need to add the, Masabi, those validators, the mobile ticketing to this report, because we are seeing, increase in people using mobile tickets rather than the paper tickets we've always traditionally used.
Is that something you were going to talk to the board about, or what those numbers are?
Yeah, I think in the next section.
Oh, that's under technology.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, let's just go ahead and combine B and D, because C is going to be postponed anyway.
Yeah. We'll jump to the technology report. We're going to skip over the COA update for this month. One thing I want to jump in on the technology report, because it's kind of tied to the winter weather event that we've gone through this week. The technology from Remix that helps us create detours, that helps us send out to the transit app through Equans updates to our passengers, has been extremely helpful for us in the last couple of days. And I also want to take some time to thank our passengers for being so patient with our changes. Our operators have done a fantastic job of coming out. When a lot of people wouldn't want to leave their homes, we didn't have a problem at all getting our drivers to come in and run the routes. To the supervisors who are constantly going around the entire county, making sure the routes that we're running are safe, making the adjustments, and the dispatchers who, if you were here the other morning, and if you're here tomorrow morning, if you want to come in and watch something magical, watch these people organize and pull off this. It's incredible just to watch how they do this while there's phones ringing every 3 seconds, and hey, did this route change, did that route change? It's really impressive. And the maintenance department for keeping the buses running, keeping the property safe. It's a team effort that happens on a scale that it would shock you guys to see. But the really neat thing, and why I'm bringing this up for the technology report, is going through that process, we now have the ability to save those alerts. So if because of the snow, we didn't go down to the Quincy Walmart, that's now saved as a route modification in our system. So come tomorrow morning, where it's likely that could happen again, because these different weather conditions create the same situation in the same areas, our dispatchers will now be able to immediately just pull that alert up, put it in the system. It immediately goes out to everyone with the transit app who gets notifications for Route 22, and they get that on their phone. And it also immediately feeds to the drivers on their tablets and says, hey, you're no longer doing this or that, because historically our dispatchers called out to the drivers and they'd have to remember what the dispatchers told them 2 or 3 hours ago or when they first got on the shift. And it's changing so much that it's a lot of information to process. So by you all allowing us to upgrade our technology to the extent that this happens seamlessly, it's what makes us so much better for our passengers when these events do pop up. I'll let Jacob go on with some more of the software and technology updates, but I wanted to make sure I thanked everybody for being so patient and to prepare for tomorrow. It's going to be another rough day, and I'm so confident that our team's going to do well.
Does the West Virginia 511 information feed directly into ours, or does somebody have to look at that and realize there's a wreck here or a road closure for whatever reason?
I think our dispatch monitors that, but it's a combination of looking at the cameras. It's also just the supervisors driving those routes and the feedback from our drivers. A lot of times drivers will notice something when they go out and they understand what those vehicles are capable of and not.
Mm-hmm.
And the other update is the validators. They were installed over the last couple months. Last month we put them into place. We've seen a small percentage of passengers started to use those. I think we had roughly 2,000 rides last month. People paying with their mobile ticketing. So with the other agencies in the Neo Ride group, it's been a small onboarding process. You see a small uptick each month of people transitioning to the mobile ticketing. So it's something we're excited about. I'm sure Brett's excited because the goal would be to get less people using the fare boxes, using these validators, and then in return there'll be less maintenance issues on those fare boxes, less breakdowns for the drivers. The maintenance department will love that too, less road calls than going out to replace the fare boxes or work on the fare boxes.
Do we know how many people have downloaded the app?
That's something we can track. I'm not sure what that number is, but we can definitely track that.
Yeah, and it's really neat. I mean, one of the neat features that I showed of transit is just people riding. And I mean, it sounds funny, but you can see how many people have actually ridden, because you get a unique username and you can see how many people have ridden each route. And I mean, 17 people, or this person's ridden 17 times on Route 3 this month to Institute. And it also helps with the real-time tracking of the buses. So if you click on a route, you can sometimes see that, like right now, there's a person on the St. Albans bus.
So it has a little emoji of that person that shows them on that bus?
Yeah, you select your own emoji, and what that does, the way that helps us is it's not just the feed from the buses, it's also the GPS from the phones that are on the people who are on the bus when they click yes, you can track this. So
you have like 3 signals if there's 2 passengers plus the bus signal?
Exactly.
Oh.
So it's making it a little bit stronger as far as how accurate our bus locations are, which then helps people when they click, hey, remind me in 5 minutes when I need to leave. Because right now you can say, hey, I want to pick up the St. Albans bus, and it's going to tell you when you need to walk out. You can say, let me know when I have a 10-minute warning. That didn't happen before, but it works now. And we put out kind of a general informational video on how to use transit app, but we're going to make several more as far as how do you buy your tickets, how do you do this, that, because there are a lot of features for our passengers to digest. But what it can do compared to KRT Live is just light years ahead.
And so when do we hit a confidence level that we're really promoting this on the radio and formats that people, we'll go from 2,000 to 15,000?
I mean, we've had a couple of initial meetings with Mike Haid and his team that talked about the marketing. They've created some boilerplate social media graphics that we've started throwing out, and then we've thrown out the informational videos on YouTube, talking about it more. We've debated kind of, hey, do you want to do the marketing as far as like billboards, etc. Right now, it's a lot of our responses to social media messages or calls when people. A tremendous volume of our calls, especially when there's weather events, are about changes in service that the transit app answers now. you can easily go on there and see how delayed the bus is, or if it's canceled, or anything. You now get these alerts. So it is educating the passengers that this app exists, because you do still have that kind of crossover where some folks are still using the old KRT Live. Even though it's been essentially dead, it still did have the schedule information, et cetera, on there. So it's that process of us trying to use social media, our website, et cetera, to push that information out.
Another thing that we're planning to do too, and it's simple, but it's gonna be very effective, tabling down at the city center, but it's too cold to do now. But having some supervisors or whoever down there to walk people through the process of downloading the app, getting to them directly. It's gonna be simple but very effective, I believe, at getting those to download.
And get on the bus, the supervisors riding the bus for a couple hours and talking to the passengers, educating them, our drivers as well.
Yep. Then we can putting the QR codes to download the actual app on the bus. Those infotainment screens that we now can provide information, as opposed to just when we would tape a piece of paper up on the wall and hope that they read it when they got on there. Now it's scrolling through with all this information.
So we've trained our drivers about how, for them to explain to the consumers about how to get it loaded.
Last month we had another training session with all the drivers, and we went over that.
That's a long way away from where we were. I mean, I remember when Eric Hicks insisted that we get a system that you could track, what the buses were doing, and we kind of halfway got there before.
Well, and you think now, if you go down to the city center and you look at those, they're called connect point signs. We've got 4 of them, and we've got a big information monitor, I won't call it a TV, on the outside of the building. And what that showed for the last almost 2 years was just the schedules. Well, now you'll see a little radio signal pulsing, and that's real-time updates. So people aren't just sitting there waiting on the bus that's going to show up at noon. It's going to tell them, hey, the bus is showing up at 12:03, 12:04. Sounds like a little detail, but it's a big deal to those people who are standing out there when it's this cold. And as another thing I didn't touch on too, during this weather, our warming buses that we put down there overnight, that's a service we offer that, I thank our drivers and our operators for being down there and doing that. It's a kind of a thankless job, but we position vehicles when the temperature's below 25. We work with United Way to move individuals to Manamil and back and forth, and we work with Margaret O'Neill. Since last Sunday, we've been operating that service every night, and having warming buses downtown. So some little things behind the scenes we don't always maybe talk about enough, but we're really proud that we make that happen when it's cold out.
And I didn't mean to completely blow over 6C, which is the comprehensive operational analysis. So just explain why we're postponing that.
Yeah, so we've received a draft from Kinley Horn with some updates on the COA. We received that a little bit later than we were hoping to, and we want to make sure we go over that in order to make sure. We had some questions that we needed answered by our consultant before we made the presentation to the board, so we're going to clean that up, and we will have that on the next month's agenda to go in depth on their findings. The next step for them is making this presentation of the draft report, getting feedback from the board, and then working on their final presentation.
Okay. So it looks like we're on 7A.
Yep.
So we started 2 new programs the past 6 months, some pilot programs with Jan Dill's attorneys at law and West Virginia State University, some ridership programs, similar to the UC program we have. So Jan Dills was purchasing some bus passes for veterans. The veterans were coming to our office here or the city center to get those passes. It was a successful program. We were averaging I think 30 veterans a month were utilizing these passes. So that's something we're planning to continue with Jan Dills. We'll just change it up a little bit. Instead of them buying 31-day passes, it'll be similar to UC, where we'll bill them for each pass or each ride taken. And West Virginia State, it's the exact same program as we're doing with UC. It's been a success as well. We're averaging, that's on the one report, the pass usage report, you probably noticed that uptick in the 31-day passes. That's from West Virginia State. So there's about 2,000 a month rides or passes being used from their students.
2,000 a month?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So
Not
So the
just with
plans is to continue that program as well and operate the same way as we do with UC.
And on the Jan Dills program, do you think we're getting new riders, or are these people that were riding anyway?
I think it's a mixture. I think some were already riding, but there's some that possibly weren't riding.
Okay.
Or they're writing more.
Yeah.
Which in turn, because they now have this monthly pass, so they are riding more often, and then we give Jan Dills and their team the feedback of how many riders, and that's what we think is important.
Correct.
So on the UC students and state, what do they swipe to get on the bus?
So UC uses their student ID. And Washington State is their IDs weren't compatible with our fare boxes, so we gave them the 31-day passes. They were going to like,
Every one of
student
those
union.
people should be on the mobile.
Well,
I mean,
that's what we're going to do. Yeah.
So they'll be forced to use that.
Right. They'll be either the mobile ticketing app or a smart card that is applicable with the validators. They would just scan their QR on the phone or use the smart card to pay for their fare.
That'd be a great place for the supervisors to start with onboard training, is with all
Oh,
these
yeah.
passengers, because I guarantee you that as soon as they've all would adapt
Yeah.
to it really quickly.
Absolutely.
Kurt?
Any other questions on the technology and programs that Jacob talked about? Kurt, I think you're up.
Good morning. In front of you, we have our updated EEO plan. Seems like every couple of months I come forward with another plan that we have to do. EEO is one of the 3 civil rights laws that we have to follow. You know, we pay federal money, so there's certain guidelines that we have to follow. EEO is about employment practice, okay? A couple months ago, we talked about Title VI, public access to a service. We have ADA, which is also dealing with public access and employment. The EEO relates only to employment practice. In this plan, we've designated a civil rights officer, which is me, and because I'm designated as a civil rights officer, I have to do a certain amount of things each year in order to get us into compliance with FTA. One of those things is training. We talked about training. So during the last CBA, or with the union, we set up a series of up to 6 2-hour trainings. And every time we do a training, there's going to be some civil rights laws that are going to be involved in that training, whether it be Title VI or EEO. I also, during orientation with any new drivers, I meet with them, talk about EEO, talk about Title VI. With the management, we have to have 2 sessions each year to talk about EEO. So what are we talking about when we talk about EEO? Well, a lot of it's reporting. So when someone comes to interview, they have to do a self-identification sheet. They fill this information out, we get it, we put it in a spreadsheet, and we track that information as opposed to they're applying for. It's got demographic data in it that we have to track. We also track hiring. If we've offered a job and they didn't take it, we still have to track that. Firings, discipline, raises, wages, all of that information has to be reported to FTA. FTA then takes that information and decide whether or not they see any red flags, they see if we're following all the procedures that we need to. Another thing that I have to do is I have to concur on every hire here. It doesn't mean that I'm picking the candidates. I think that's what folks initially thought, and this is a regulation, I have to concur. No. All I'm doing is making sure that when we're interviewing someone or we're trying to hire someone, that the process was followed correctly. That we're making sure in our advertising that we're showing that we're an EEO employer, that we're interviewing folks. The person that was hired actually has the qualifications that meets that particular job. I have to report to Sean every so often and give him a progress report of how we are coming along with our goals. And the final thing is, I have to set goals each year. Now these are goals, they're not quotas, and I think when we talk about goals, people think, oh, you have to have X number. No. That would also be illegal. We have to set goals and try to reach those goals. If we don't reach those goals on hiring, then we gotta explain why we didn't reach those goals, okay? This plan is updated every 4 years. This is the year that we do it. I think we discussed EEO about a year ago, because right after the triennial review, we changed the plan so much that I thought it should go in front of the board. So that's the EEO plan. I'll answer any questions if anyone has any.
So what are the revisions in here? I mean,
So-
substantive, or can you point to?
So not really, not from the last time we did it. There was a few procedures that we needed to update. Having meetings with management 2 times a year. Also training anyone that got promoted from, say, operator to management. I have to meet with them within 90 days and train them. Really, those were the only revisions. A lot of this was hashed out during the triennial review. So this was a very easy update. We're just statutorily required to have this passed this year and then send it back up to FDA. So they've reviewed this plan, so this should be a pretty quick review.
I would assume our plan looks like everybody else's plan, that they should be a template.
Correct. We did a lot of work during the triennial review in order to get our plan up to compliance.
And you know what dawned on me is, when we get these in the future, could we get a red line version? That way we can easily detect what's different.
Sure.
Because I can't remember the last version.
And maybe in advance of the board meeting. I think we've had a few of these where we don't see the plan until the board meeting, and then the meeting has to make a decision. I feel comfortable giving the explanations, but it would be nice to have it.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do have a lot of plans. We have
Yeah,
some
agree.
that are yearly, and they're different too. Some are yearly, some are every 3 years, some are every 4 years. Data points go out every 2 years, and they're different. What we have to track. So yeah, I'll give a summary.
Okay. Or just whatever edits you make, if they can be a red line version, so that when we get it in the board packet, we'll know exactly
Yep.
what's different.
Yep.
So what action is it that you're asking the board to take?
So
I
I
mean,
need
first
a
of all, I guess
motion
if
to-
there's questions for Kurt, I
sorry.
didn't mean to forego that opportunity. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kurt.
So what I need from the board today is a motion to approve the updated EEO plan.
I'll make a motion to approve the equal employment updated plan.
Okay, motion by Snodgrass and a second by Sutphen. I'm sorry, that was not you, Bob? I know I heard Arthur in there. Any further discussion about the EEO plan? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Well, my question is, how bad a board you been to have all these regulations keep you in line?
You know, I don't know. Every time I turn around, there's a new plan I gotta write.
I would say being the EEO officer has some major responsibilities associated with it that not only tie to his employment, but also his reputation, and it's a lot involved in that. So appreciate you spearheading that. Any other thing else before the board? We got done fairly early, so.